Okay, we'll get started. Good evening, welcome to Clare Institute, everybody, especially newcomers. If you haven't been here before, it's all very bit odd when you first walk in here. I know it was for me years ago. My first thought was, if anyone hits me for money, I'm not coming back. And I just thought, if anything weird happens, if anything strange happens, I won't be back again. But that was 1996, I think, and so I never not came back again. So I've been coming here since I was 94, actually. Yeah, 94. How long's that? Okay, look, I'll get started with the refuge and bodhicitta prayer. That the way that we always start our teachings here at Clare Institute and in other FPMT centres. The whole purpose of meditation is to calm the mind and try and find a more peaceful and happy place. And so the first thing that we do is turn our mind towards someone that we believe has sort of achieved these states of more peace and happiness. And it can be anybody that you that inspires you this way. But of course here it's a Buddhist centre, so we look towards the Buddha and his teachings. And I'll explain the prayer. I usually do start with explaining, after I've said this sort of introductory prayer, I'll talk about it a little bit and explain. So when the Tibetans pray, they put their thumbs in. I'm not asking you to do this, but it's just I'll just explain things as we go about different sort of things that happen here. They put their thumbs in, and it's like this. They visualise it as what they call a wish-fulfilling jewel, and you're holding this wish that you will become enlightened and then be able to benefit others. So that it's this desire to become better and more peaceful and happy, and then you're more use to others. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma and the Sangha from the virtuous merit that I collect by practicing giving and the other perfections. May I attain the state of a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma and the highest assembly from the virtuous merit that I collect by practicing giving and the other perfections. May I attain the state of a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma and the highest assembly from the virtuous merit that I collect by practicing giving and the other perfections. May I attain the state of a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. So, as I said, we turn our minds towards this being that's achieved this state. The Buddha, look, I'm sure a lot of you have heard the stories of the Buddha, but he, just for those who are new and may not know his story, he was born into a royal family and had a very privileged life, and it was all sort of laid out for him, his future. And he married and had a child, but during his life he was a very kind man, and there was a point where he left. His father had protected him, his family had protected him very much from the outside world and the suffering that was going on, and he left the palace at some stage and encountered three things: a sick person, an old person, and there was a dead body. So these were sort of things that he'd been protected from in his life, and it got him thinking, and it affected him very profoundly, and he started to study to try and find some answers. So he studied all the Hindu texts and became very good at all of that. He reached a high sort of understanding of the Vedic texts and practices, but sort of realised that it still wasn't, there was still suffering, obviously suffering. So he then left his family and went off and sort of studied on his own, and had some friends that he travelled with. And I might be getting things out of sequence here. I'm not 100% sure of the dates and details and stuff. But he still, doing all of these practices and travelling with his friends, still he'd reach high states of sort of peace, but then as soon as he came out of the meditation, he was suffering. You know, he was still suffering and still not satisfied with the answers that he'd found. And that's when he went off on his own and sat and decided that he sat under the Bodhi tree, and he wasn't going to get up until he'd kind of gone beyond suffering. And that's what happened. And he released his mind to a state of no suffering. And no matter what kind of happened then, he didn't feel any suffering. There was still sort of, he was in his normal body, which does experience pains and things, but he experienced them differently. He had a different perspective on it all. So, and was completely free and at peace. And this, he'd freed his mind. And in Buddhism, they say the mind and the body are two, they're not the same. In Western thinking, the brain is often associated with the mind, or they'll say the mind is the brain. But Buddhism would say that it's dependent on the brain, and it works with the body, with the physical, but it's not physical matter. Because if it was, then your parents, you know, the egg and the sperm coming together to create your physical form, if your mind was physical, you'd have your parents' mind as well. So there's a lot of, they often use sort of logic to kind of try and get you to think more deeply about these things. So he completely freed his mind, and then he he didn't tell anyone. He was just sort of walking around and just living. And his friends caught up with him, and they were like, they had been quite upset with him that he'd sort of said that he wasn't happy with what they were doing and went and gone off on his own. And then when they saw him, it was sort of like, well, something's happened. You know, you look different, you look kind of radiant, something's happened. Tell us what you've done. And then he taught them, and they became his first disciples. And then he went back, and his wife and his son became enlightened as well. So it's not advocating leaving your family to go off and get enlightened. And I know that that's it's frowned upon. We have the resident teacher here, and if he hears stories like that, he's not happy. If people sort of think, you know, life is too hard and everything, and then you kind of abandon the people that are dependent on you, that's not cool. But the Buddha knew kind of what he was doing. So, and he went back, and his wife and his child became enlightened as well. So that's why and then it just sort of radiated out from there. He taught a lot of people, and then a lot of people did become enlightened, and throughout the ages they've passed this knowledge down. And so that's why we look towards, you know, like, you know, you study what he taught, and hopefully find some answers and some peace through that. So the Dharma is what he taught. So when you go to the Buddha, the Dharma and the Sangha. And the Sangha are people that, it's sort of two things. Sometimes it's usually a person who has realizations or has been studying this for a very, very long time, and you know that you can trust them. You've tested their teaching, and someone like Geshe Doga would be Sangha. You sort of, I listen to him because I've sort of always been very interested in what he's saying and learned a lot from what he's saying. And sometimes, the Sangha can also just refer to general Sangha, which is the people in robes that not necessarily have the, they're not enlightened or as such, but a group of Sangha you can that you can rely on as well to help you. I go for Buddha Dharma Sangha. From the virtuous merit that I collect by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I attain the state of a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. So they refer to the giving and the other perfections. So in this small prayer, it kind of covers the whole path almost, because the giving, they have what's called the 6 perfections, which are practices of Buddhism. And the 6 perfections are giving, generosity, morality, patience, joyous effort, concentration and wisdom. So through generosity, you're in the moment of giving, in the moment of helping someone, you're not thinking of yourself. You're actually in that moment, you're actually thinking of the other or others. And the problems, and we'll talk about this further on, our problems generally start with because we want something and we're not getting it, or we get something that we don't want. But in the moment of giving, you're not actually thinking about yourself and your own needs. You're thinking about the needs of someone else. So in that moment, you're kind of released of this me thing that is making us crazy. So that it follows that the more that you give, the less you're thinking of yourself. You're able to make better decisions and better choices, because our choices are tainted about what we're going to get out of a situation or a person or whatever. So that when, and then we make bad choices to try and get what we want, or we get upset when we don't get what we want and stuff. But if you're less concerned about this, about getting for yourself, you're going to be less unhappy when it doesn't work out. So that then as that sort of starts to make sense to you, you're less inclined to get angry, and not getting angry is patience. So you become more patient and less inclined to get upset about things, so that you can actually sort of you're not just tolerating and hanging on by your fingernails, you're actually not getting upset when bad things happen. And when, like sometimes something will happen that is really upsetting you, but the person next to you isn't upset. They're in the same situation, but they're not being upset. Or you want something like a dress. Saw a really gorgeous dress in a shop, but someone else will look at that dress and not think it's gorgeous or not want it, and it's not upsetting them. So it's your perspective in the moment about what's going on, and you know that for yourself. You know that there are some things that you can tolerate that other people can't, and there are things that you can't tolerate that other people seem to be able to put up with. And we're all kind of a bit different. So it just shows that it's our own perspective on these things. So the less we're kind of stressing about ourselves, the less these things are going to affect us. And we become more patient. And as we become more patient, we're getting, you're going to become more peaceful and more happy. The less upset you are, the more peaceful you're going to feel, the happier you're going to feel. And lately, Geshe Doga in his teachings has been saying, I am happy. I am happy. He goes, he's sort of, and you think that's such a simple statement. What's his, and he said it a few times recently, and he's saying, whatever is happening, I have a happy mind. Whatever's going on, I still actually have a happy mind, which is, be nice to be able to do that. And you have moments of that where you can sort of behave and understand that, the situation's not as dire as you might think it is, and that you can sort of walk away feeling much less stressed than you normally would. But he's actually sort of saying you can actually be happy. In a terrible situation, you can still keep a happy mind. So that leads to joyous effort, and you sort of think, well, this really makes sense, and it's great. So rather than thinking, I have to be patient, I have to be good, you're actually thinking, I'm really enjoying this. This is making things a lot easier for me, and that will give you the strength to keep reminding yourself, keep trying to do these practices, because you're getting happier. And then that creates this, what they call joyous effort, which will sustain you. You can't be doing it by just saying, I have to be good, or having Catholic guilt about not being good. That's not going to be helpful. You actually have to, you get to a point where you're actually feeling a lot more peaceful, so that it makes it, you want to keep going. And then with joyous effort, you develop better concentration. You're actually able to do a lot more, because your mind's not so distracted by all of the things that are making you crazy, whether it's things that you want or things that you don't want, or things that make you really angry. There's so many things in the day that can make me angry. But if I've been meditating, I know that it makes me less inclined to get upset about things. And focus. When I'm really upset, I can't focus on anything. And lately I've been quite stressed, not angry, but so many things. I've been very, very busy lately. And that's been a real distraction for me. My mind has been all over the place. And then when I've sat down and meditated, make the effort, it's the last thing I feel like doing, but if I sit down and make the effort, and it just sort of clears everything, and then I'm able to focus and able to juggle and do the things that I need to do. So it helps with your concentration. And then in terms of your meditation, the tools that you need are mindfulness and introspection. You need really good concentration to be able to continue with your meditation, or for it to advance, so that you learn to meditate and you slowly get better and stronger at your meditation. And because of all of these other nice things that you've been doing, you've been generous, you've been ethical, your mind is clearer and more at peace, and you are able to meditate. And the times when I'm upset or I'm stressed, it's a double-edged thing. It's harder to sit down and meditate because I'm so distracted, and my meditation will be all over the shop. My mind keeps racing to things. But if I'm meditating frequently, I know that if I sit down and focus and just stop the worry for a while, it's very, very powerful. But you need to practice. And then with these powers of concentration and meditation, then you can actually look into the nature of reality like the Buddha did, and have the ability to really understand what you're doing wrong, what we're doing that's causing us to be always unsatisfied. And I was reading today that the word dukkha in Pali is translated as suffering, but the thing I was reading today was saying that it's more accurate to say it's a lack of satisfaction. So that whatever we're doing, even if we're in a really, a good situation, or we do get what we want, we're never really quite satisfied with it. Or something will go wrong, or it ends. So this is the nature of the first noble truth, the first thing that the Buddha taught. So when the Buddha ran into his friends and they said, teach us, the first thing that he did, that the Buddha taught, they call it the first turning of the wheel, was the Four Noble Truths. They're called the Four Noble Truths, or the Four Arya Truths. And these are these four truths, all of the teachings, these things on the side here, all the texts and stuff, it's all about, it comes back to the Four Noble Truths. So we might do a little bit of meditation now, and then I'll talk about the Four Noble Truths. I'll name them: the truth of suffering, the truth of the cause of suffering, cessation of suffering, there is a cessation of suffering, and the path to that cessation of suffering. So they're the Four Noble Truths, and I'll talk about the first one after we've done a bit of breathing meditation. So the thing that's the thing that's making us crazy is our mind. It's our thoughts. Our thoughts can either go in a positive direction or virtuous direction, or they can go in a negative direction, and a self-grasping direction. And so we need to gain control of our thoughts. And normally in our day-to-day lives, we are running from one thing to another, one thought to another. And lately I've been watching my mind and seeing it going all over the place, and at times realising how really little control after all these years. I still, if I'm not watching it, just get completely sucked into the madness that is my mind. But so that the way that we gain some control is through meditation and learning to focus and not obsessing about all of the other stuff. And in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, which is a big sort of text that's quite often used in this tradition, Pabonka Rinpoche says we actually do have really good focus. We're very good at focusing and obsessing on stuff and not letting it go. We can focus very well on the things that make us crazy. So now, with meditation we can learn to focus on things that are going to make us feel better. So we'll do some breathing meditation, and you just sit as comfortably as possible with a straight back, so that the energy channels are free. It's like in yoga when they work with the chakras. There are similar kind of things meditation, they'll talk about energy channels. And you actually find that if you're sort of slouching or sitting in a soft chair or something, and try to meditate, you can feel that it's not as clear. So that with a straight back, your mind is actually clearer. And again, in this tradition, they put the left hand down and the right hand on top, and the thumbs just touching. And that's an energy thing as well. But, you know, if whatever you're comfortable with, you can put your hands. And so you relax the shoulders and the chin in slightly, not sort of right down. And you don't want the head too high or too low. And with the eyes almost closed. So that if your eyes are fully closed, you tend to sort of doze a bit. And if they're open, you get distracted. So you just let some light in. And the tongue on the top of the palate behind the teeth. And just relax the lips. And the elbows out slightly, not gripping your body. And just bring your mind inwards. Letting go of the day, letting go of thoughts. And just focusing on the breath. And focusing on the coming and going of the breath. So breathing in and out is one round. And try and focus mentally on the coming and going of the breath, more than just the sensation, which is a physical feeling. But if you follow your breath mentally, it's bringing the mind in even more. I'll just do this for a few minutes, counting the breaths. If your mind drifts, just bring it back to the breath, letting go of any thoughts that you can come back to later. But for now, just letting them go like clouds passing. Bringing your focus back to the breath. Okay, just gently bringing your mind back to the room. I was going to stop a bit sooner, but I looked up and everyone was in deep meditation. I didn't want to disturb anybody. And then I thought, what often happens, especially when you start meditating, is that you feel that your mind is completely distracted. You have a lot of thoughts, and you're sort of aware that your mind is going all over the place while you're trying to focus. And it's actually not a bad sign. It's sort of showing that you're becoming more aware of your thinking, of what's actually going on in your mind. And that's a meditation in itself, is watching the mind, which we might do, on one of the other nights. You just watch your mind, and it's a really great meditation, because somehow it actually sort of calms you down by actually watching what you're doing as well, and naming it, and sort of realising how your mind does sort of race. But the breathing meditation is to stop, it slows down the discursive thoughts. So it's something that if you do it a little bit every day, and you just take that time out, especially if you're really busy, if there's a lot going on, or if you're in a situation, and if you just take those few minutes out to sit and bring your mind inwards and just focus on the breath, and tell yourself, I'm just going to stop just for this short time, and I can then go back and address whatever it is. It's a circuit breaker. It takes the stress out of a situation. It actually sort of really calms you down, so then you can sort of just go on. It's a nice tool to have up your sleeve. So, the first noble truth, the truth of suffering. Another thing I read today was from a sutra called the Fire Sutra, which I've never heard of before. But the sutras are the Buddha's words. So I think it's the ones on the left there. All of the Buddha's words were recorded. All of the teachings that he gave were, I think they were written down by students after he passed away, but they wrote everything down. And these were people that were fairly highly realised and skilled themselves, and had very, very good memories, and they wrote down all of the Buddha's words. And they're called the sutras. But in the Fire Sutra, it's like the Heart Sutra. He's saying, in the Heart Sutra they say there is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. And in the Fire Sutra they're saying that the eyes are on fire, the ears are on fire, the nose is on fire, the tongue is on fire, the body is on fire, the mind is on fire. And then explaining that it's with the fire of the three poisons, the fire of attachment, the fire of desire, the fire of anger. And what it's actually saying is everything that we sort of do, think and feel is tainted by these negative states of mind. And it's because of that we suffer. So that they categorise suffering into three types. And I'll come back to that sort of, it refers more to the third type, the all-pervasive suffering. So there's the suffering of suffering, which is normal, what we understand as pain, sickness, grieving. We clearly we see these things as painful and as suffering. Then there's the suffering of change, which we don't always see as suffering. So it's this, the suffering of change is, it's like when something good happens, then one way or another it will end. Whether it ends, you know, eating chocolate cake. We often refer to chocolate cake. It ends, and then you want more. You know, you're never quite satisfied. You want, that tasted so good, I'll have another piece. Because it was good, you relate to it as feeling, as pleasure, it was really good. I'll have some more. But if you kept eating chocolate cake, it wouldn't be good. You wouldn't feel good. You'd start to feel a bit sick, you know, and then you'd be really sick of it. So that pleasure became a form of suffering. But it always, Buddhism describes it as the very first moment of pleasure was the first moment of suffering. So it was the beginning of suffering. It's like if you go to the beach on a hot day and it's so nice to go in the water, but if you stay in the water, you're going to get very cold, especially in Victoria. It starts to get very, very cold, so then you have to get out of the water, and then it's really nice because you're in the sun and you can lie down and in the sun, and then you start to get really hot and you have to go back in the water again. So the moment you stepped into the water was the beginning of cold. It was just a relief from hot, and that's what feels good. It's the relief from the hot, but it's actually the first moment of cold, which is going to get colder and colder and colder. So everything works like that. So whatever we sort of... and there's no... it's not that you can't enjoy these things, but it's because the problem is, and the real suffering happens, when we grasp onto that as absolutely this is the source of my pleasure, this is the source of my happiness. Swimming in the ocean is the greatest source of happiness, and I absolutely, you know, that's what's going to do it for me. It's going to make me blissfully happy if I swim in the ocean all the time. But we know that that's not true, and, you know, and I know intellectually that it's not true, but I'm grasping onto it as something that's so absolutely vitally important that I can't live without it. And some people would. I mean, imagine if you were a pro surfer or something, and you were in the ocean all the time, and that was your life. That you would see that as totally, you know, if it was taken away from you, it would make you very unhappy. So it's that thing of assessing whether, if it's taken away from me, will I be unhappy? Or can I just enjoy it and let it go when it's gone? So you can see the difference. If you're able to just sort of experience things and let them go. But we don't do that. We focus in on things that are going to make us, if just this thing happens, I'll be really happy. Or if just, you know, once I'm through this stressful period that I'm going through, I'll be really, you know, things will be fine. But I'm getting older, and, you know, I would have thought getting old, things got easier. But, you know, it doesn't seem to be working that way. So it's just, you know, stuff keeps happening, and life just keeps happening. And you know, things hit you left field. People die, you know, stuff, you know, it's serious. Life is very serious. and also very silly, you know. And this thing of Geshe Doga lately saying, I am happy, I feel like it was just the thing I needed to hear. If all of this stress that I'm going through at the moment, with just various things seeming all to be happening at once, and having his words in my mind, thinking, well, I can just go through this, and if I can keep my mind happy, I'm in the same situation, but if I can keep a happy mind, it won't be so stressful. Do you see what I mean? If I can actually contain myself and control my mind, I can't escape what's going on. So, it's better if I can actually keep a happy mind while it's going on. So, it's nothing particularly dire happening. It's just a lot of things, work and home and moving and, just stuff to deal with. But I get overwhelmed. I think I'm, basically quite lazy. I don't like to have to deal with a lot of things. So when it happens, I get overwhelmed. But I'm thinking, just deal with it. You're a grown woman. You can get on with it and deal with things, and people do. So it's always my perspective. One day I'm sort of coping, the next day I'm not. Nothing's changed. It's the same situation, but sometimes I cope, sometimes I don't. But if I had this strength of mind, I could just go through it. And there's a saying in it, I think there's a saying in the Catholic tradition too, it's something like, if you can fix a situation, then you act and you fix it, so why worry about it? If you can't fix a situation, why worry about it? If you keep your peace of mind, the situation's there's nothing you can do about it, but just keep your own peace of mind. And that's the difference. So it's through meditation that we can sort of learn to have that different perspective, just shift our mind. And it does come back to this thing of self-cherishing. The more I'm sort of worrying about me, the more stressed the situation is. But you can also just do a simple thing like think, well, there are people in much worse situations. And then you realise that, what am I upset about? What am I complaining about? That's one way of looking at it. But I think a better way of looking at it is that if you can actually do this, use this tool of meditation, you can also, there's another trick that it's a tool, and it's a really helpful thing to think of, is that I'm in this situation, a lot of other people are in this situation, or these different situations, a lot of people are going through terrible things. I'm going to go through this, whatever it is that I'm dealing with, and offer it up in order that others don't have to suffer. And you're not actually, it's not like you're sort of going out and changing someone else's suffering, but by my thinking, I will suffer this so that others don't need to suffer. It helps your mind to let go, because you're actually offering it for a positive reason. I don't know if that's too much to think about, but there are meditations where you can actually work on that kind of thinking, that I will suffer this so that others don't need to suffer. And that in that moment you're thinking of others not suffering, and it's just has a slight effect on your mind of letting go. I've kind of find it helps without having to really even think about it too much. It's just really helpful to think of others at the time that you're kind of really thinking of yourself. So the suffering of change. And then there's all-pervasive suffering. Is the third type of suffering that they describe. And that's just this mere fact of having this physical body. We will suffer, the body and mind. We will, it's just a condition of being born, of that we suffer. So that you sort of look around and think, oh, you know, if only this, if only that, or, you know, that person looks so happy. But if you sort of really look at it, everyone's kind of dealing with something. And no matter how high or low a person is, that you know, we know that everyone's going to have to suffer the same kind of issues and problems, whether it be physical, getting old, sick, death. You know, we're all facing these things. So it's distressing, it's disturbing to sort of think about these things. And but the thing about it is that if we actually sort of... The strange thing is that when you're actually really thinking about these things, you then make choices in your life about, okay, how am I going to spend my time? What am I going to do with my time? What am I going to do with my mind? Am I going to let myself go crazy? Am I going to spend my time just getting everything for me and thinking about me? Or am I going to do something positive with my mind and with my time? So it's a way of looking at the world, and I don't want to sound miserable. I don't want to be being depressing, because it's not meant to be like that. It's more about... It's like someone who might have had a near-death experience and then they make amazing choices in their life afterwards. If we were kind of aware of reality, then we would be using our time more positively. And when you have a positive mind, and virtue, the word virtue can grate on some people, but when you're doing positive, kind, helpful things, you feel better, you feel happier. And people that are really, really kind and do actually, they can pass away, they can die peacefully. I don't know if, some people may have witnessed it. I have people that you can have a good death. And that's what a lot of this comes down to. It's just keeping your mind in a peaceful place, so that even that, the ultimate challenge is doable. We can deal with it. So we might do another meditation. Next week I'll talk about the causes of suffering, and as the weeks go on, and then talk about the cessation of suffering. So Buddhism says there is an end to suffering. There is a way out. And they don't just leave you with, yes, it's all awful. But there are these wonderful tools, these wonderful things that you can do to help your mind. And we don't have to suffer as much, maybe, So I'll do the what's called the body of light meditation. Okay, so just again bringing your mind inwards and sitting comfortably with your back straight and just breathing naturally. We generate a positive motivation, thinking that we'll do this meditation so that we can clear our minds and become more able to help others and ourselves. Now just watching the breath for a few moments, letting your thoughts go. And you can visualise your mind is like a clear blue sky. Just looking up into the clear blue sky with no clouds. And this clear space comes down into you, and your mind becomes like the clear sky. And any thoughts are just like passing clouds, but your mind remains clear. Now visualise in the space above your head a sphere of white light, somewhat smaller than the size of your head. It's pure and transparent, non-material. Just concentrate on the presence of the light above your head. And don't worry if it's not appearing sharp, it's just enough to feel that it's there. Think that the sphere of light represents all universal goodness, love and wisdom. And the fulfillment of your own highest potential. Which is this love and wisdom. Now visualize that it decreases in size until it's about 2 centimeters or an inch in diameter. And it descends through the top of your crown of your head down to your heart center. From there it begins to expand once more, slowly spreading to fill your entire body. As it does, all the solid parts of your body dissolve and become light. Your organs, bones, blood vessels, tissues and skin all become pure, translucent, white light. Just concentrate on this experience of your body as a body of light. Light that is completely filled with love and wisdom and healing. Think that all problems, negativities and hindrances have completely vanished. And that you have reached a state of wholeness and perfection. With the light radiating out through your pores, from your fingers, from your toes. Feel serene and joyful. If any thought or distracting object appears to your mind, let it also dissolve into white light. So we'll just finish by dedicating the positive energy of the meditation to the benefit of all beings. And bring your mind gently back to the room. Okay, it's just gone 8, but if anyone's got any questions. Yes. Are we not resisting as well? Sorry, I didn't catch that word. Resisting. Because every controlling factor has some sort of resistance to it. Okay, yeah. I'll just repeat the question for the tape. That you're saying that you don't think we can really control the mind. We can observe the mind, but when you try to control the mind, it resists. Yep. It sure does. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, yeah. No, it's
Because the more you resist, the more you persist.
yeah.
That's just the nature of the mind.
The more you resist, the more you persist. Yes, that makes it sound tougher than it really is, I think. I think what this is it's a slow process. It's really slowly, and it's like the mind is like it's like a muscle almost. It's like if you went to the gym and decided you wanted to get fit and started lifting weights, you wouldn't try to lift the heavy weights first. You'd start small. And it's really important to start small and to be gentle with yourself. But my belief is that you can control the mind, and my experience is that you have moments where you can see how it works, and then you lose it again. But it's with just regular, slowly being gentle with yourself, spending a few minutes each day. It's probably really it's important really to do a little bit every day. And it's like anything else. If you wanted to get fit physically, you wouldn't go to the gym once a month to get physically fit. If the more you work at it, the stronger it's going to be. And that's absolutely true of the mind as well. The more you work on it, the more you reap the benefits, you feel the benefits of it.
Because I also believe that meditation is not about gaining something, it's actually about losing. Because we lose fear, anger.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. So I'll just repeat again you're saying that meditation's not about gaining something, it's about losing something, with fear and anger, yeah. That's right, yes. And it's the ignorance of reality. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
They feel too much with the body, you'll be scared of dying.
Yeah.
Otherwise they're learning to be scared.
That's right. So that's attachment. Yes, you're talking about. So I have to keep repeating what you're saying you're talking about attachment for the body. Too much attachment and that comes from ignorance, of not understanding that there's no point in having attachment for the body, because the body is constantly, and we know this intellectually, it's constantly changing. It's like holding sand in your hand. It's falling through your hand. You can't grip onto things because they're constantly becoming something else and changing. And we try to grasp hold of things that make us feel good, and we don't want them to change. And that's where we're going wrong. And that's right. It's the fear and anger that we're letting go of in meditation. And that's what helps us to let go of these things. Yeah. So, but you are gaining peace and happiness. Okay. So there's tea and cake in the dining room. Thank you. Thank you all.